It's really bad.
Psychological.
Well, great. Let's call the meeting to order. So good to see everyone here on our Thursday, September 5th meeting. So shall we call the meeting to order?
Yeah, Committee Member Kane is not coming today because it's his annual, I'm focused on the stroll meeting. Committee Member Charles is here. Committee Member Tasty.
Here.
Committee Member Goldman. Committee Member Sala should be on her way. Committee Member Tiedemann.
Here.
And Chair Montauk.
Here. So item number 2 is approval of minutes. You should have the June 20th minutes at your fingertips.
Move approval as presented.
Seconded.
We have a motion second. Any comment? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carries. Thank you. Item 3 says public comment. So this is for anyone wanting to speak on an item that's not on the agenda. I don't see anyone in the audience. Does anyone on the committee have anything they want to say?
Just to remember, Sunday's the stroll.
Sunday's stroll.
It's our big event.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We also have the Best of Albany event coming up on the 26th as well.
Excellent. And that's going to be at,
That's going to be at Belmont Village, the senior housing community on San Pablo Avenue. And the votes and everything are out now, so
Awesome.
please, vote for your favorite place.
excellent. Thank you.
You all voting for me as the nicest looking law office on the avenue? All right.
Okay, so we have another
See if I
commission.
vote for you.
Unanimous, I think.
We have another committee member present, so let the record reflect. Welcome. Good to see you. Okay, so we just are doing the public comment, so this is for anything. Do you have anything you'd like to say?
Nope.
Okay.
I have, I guess, one other, not that I'm a member of the public in this case, but I'm happy to report that the American Planning Association, California chapter of the American Planning Association has recognized Solano Avenue as one of the 2019 Great Places in California.
Oh, nice.
Very good.
We got
Wow.
that certificate a week or two ago.
Damn.
Just curious, was that an application or it was?
And prepared an application, and,
Did they give these to like 2,000 places?
no,
or-
two this year.
Who is the other one?
I don't know yet.
Can we all get
There's a
copies of
meeting.
that?
I'll look into
Nice,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll look into that.
Well done. Thank you for doing that.
I think it's because they were probably drove by Stephanie's window.
Okay, so if there's no other comments, then we will close public comment, and we'll move on to item 4, which is announcements. So I'll hand that over to you, Jeff.
Yes, going down the list here, starting with 1175 Solano, the vacant space that was most recently Cafe Eugene. There was a tenant proposed, and we were asked to keep it confidential, but since it fell through, I could tell you it was intended to be a Pete's coffee shop, and that deal apparently fell through at the last minute. So while we're in pretty regular contact with Tony Kershaw, the property owner, we don't have anything, we're not aware of any new tenant going in there. 536 Cleveland Avenue, this is an industrial building just north of our new Public Works Center. It has been Albany Steel for many years. Apparently, they have relocated into Richmond.
Oh, that's
So
too bad.
So that's now a vacant space.
They were like a good taxpayer, too.
Yeah, yeah, I think they outgrew the space. So I haven't yet seen a leasing sign or any announcement about that, but I imagine that will go on the market.
I always loved driving by there, seeing that sign, Albany Steel, thinking, steel in Albany?
Is the space like toxic, or are there additional considerations for the next tenant?
I don't think they did things that were, it was more of an assembly facility from what I could tell than they weren't handling, to my knowledge, weren't handling hazardous materials. that whole area has a long industrial history, and several other parcels, including the one that we acquired, did have some issues due to previous uses. So it might, but we're not aware of it, at least.
If I may, so did staff know that this was happening, or it was just somewhat of a surprise, so to speak?
Just noticed one day that,
How long were they here for? Just curious.
God, they've been here for as long as dirt. I think they invented steel and then they moved in.
Because it seems like that's, when you look from a retention, that's a key business to have some relationship, so it's not a surprise. It's just kind of like something I think our committee should understand that, or just think about what, are there, 10 companies that we should have relationships with to understand that we want to retain them. We may not have been able to. I'm just saying it to be a somewhat.
I'd be happy to reach out to them and to see what went into their decision-making process, and if there was
Yeah.
anything that we could learn from it.
Kind
Who
of like an
owns
exit
this site?
interview.
I don't know.
Yeah, somewhat like an exit interview, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did they own their own site?
I'd have to check. I don't know.
Probably.
Okay.
They've been there so long, I would hope, they think, but
You would hope.
I suspect it's a space that should be pretty easily marketable. It's a centrally located industrial facility.
Yeah,
It's
for
easy.
sure.
So just
Free the way.
a big Pete's.
Well,
Must be a nail shop that needs a big space.
Just looking on their website, and the good thing is they still kept the name Albany Steel.
yeah.
In Richmond? In Richmond. I'm sure Richmond loves that.
Well, we have Berkeley Toyota, so I guess it,
Yeah.
Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if a car dealership was interested, because you have some frontage there along the freeway.
El Cerrito Tires, right?
Is the Target space still up for?
the parcel they subdivided. We haven't heard anything about that in quite a while, so I don't know that they have found a buyer. They didn't complete the final steps of that subdivision, which they probably do once they had a buyer. I do know that the owner of Berkeley Toyota, the Southwick family, would like to buy it. I'm not sure that's what Target wants to have in their parking lot, but
Well, that would be about as easy as anything they could have, right?
it would be easy. It would be an easy expansion for Toyota of Berkeley. It might not be necessarily a complement to someone who's shopping at Target.
For another store, but in terms of, anyway, it would be an easy use for them. It wouldn't interfere with them.
Right.
If we were in Emeryville, there'd be applications for hotels in both of those locations now.
Could be, yeah.
Okay. 1080 Monroe.
Next is 1080 Monroe. This is the retail strip on the south side of Monroe. There are 2 vacant spaces there, and the 2 tenants coming in are an AT&T store and a fitness service called Stretch Lab. And I don't, we all know what AT&T does. I'm not
Yeah.
personally familiar with what Stretch Lab is, but it's
Okay.
sort of stretching, going out on a limb there.
All stretched.
And then lastly, SB2, there's a lot going on in the housing world in California right now, and at some point, maybe we should have a full discussion. But in terms of announcements, what I wanted to say is that we're applying to the state for a grant for $160,000. It's a non-competitive grant, so as long as we fill out the information and meet the criteria that the state has established, we'll get $160,000 to do planning for housing development somewhere in the city. And based on direction from the city council, our focus is going to be on looking at zoning regulations along San Pablo Avenue to help facilitate development of more housing along San Pablo Avenue. City council had a discussion about that the other night, and we'll be looking at things like, looking at things like heights and setbacks and other zoning requirements that basically modernize our zoning code in that area. We're kind of out of date. There's a lot going on in Berkeley. There's a lot going on in El Cerrito, and our stretch of San Pablo Avenue is kind of, the zoning is more restrictive, and as a result, we're not seeing that development activity happening. At the same time, we're under increasing pressure to create housing in the city, and multifamily housing primarily, and that would be the obvious place where it should go first.
I have two questions about that. One is, this is unique to San Pablo. It doesn't affect Solano at all, or does it, or could it, or?
That's our intent right now, is to focus on San Pablo Avenue.
Okay.
There is a separate planning process. I'm sorry, this is going to get really planning wonky, but there's a separate planning process or sponsored by the Association of Bay Area Governments, a regional planning process called priority development areas. And we do have a priority development area in Albany, and it includes both San Pablo and Solano. And sometime in the next 5 years, we are going to be required to update that priority development area. So there will be some planning, perhaps, on Solano Avenue, but the emphasis is on, right now, our emphasis is, and we feel like the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, is San Pablo Avenue.
My other question is, have you guys thought about the impact of adding housing on the schools? Because it seems like our schools are really maxed out and full at every level.
We don't do the planning for the school district, but we're aware of the constraints that the school district is facing. The challenge is, because it's a good school district, we're likely to get a higher allocation of housing. More housing is likely to be assigned to Albany because of the quality of our school district compared to other cities with lesser quality school districts. So we have a problem that we're doing so well that we're going to be asked to plan for more housing and plan for more students. And that's a challenge the school district's got to anticipate.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but every time this subject of housing comes up, I don't hear much. Thank you, Stephanie, for raising that. We don't have really a housing crisis so much as we have an infrastructure crisis. We have the same infrastructure we had 40, 50 years ago, primarily, and we went from about 16 or 17 million people to 40 million. And if people think that by adding more density in that and bringing in another 10 million people, it's going to make California more livable and more affordable, they're wrong. It's going to make California hell. So what we should be talking about when we're talking about expanding housing is expanding infrastructure. Because when I first got here, which was back in the day of horse and buggy, but you could get to and from San Francisco any time of the day or night from Albany in 25 minutes by car. And at rush hour, it was 30 minutes. So if you think about that, the idea of housing and what's available with those kinds of commutes made life pretty simple. So there are lots of places where there's tons of room and a lot of availability for housing and where we could build housing, but it's not so much housing. We have a massive infrastructure deficit. We need to have at least one additional complete BART system over and above what we had. When BART was originally designed, it was designed to go to San Rafael and to Palo Alto, not even including the stuff that was supposed to happen in San Jose. So we have not kept up with infrastructure. We've been living off the infrastructure that Pat Brown built, and we have a problem in the state. That's the largest problem we have.
Okay. Yes, Aaron?
On that subject, I'd say that at least on the local level, the recently passed state budget does have a program in place for the infill infrastructure grants that Albany could apply for that would help upgrade our infrastructure, especially around proposed affordable housing developments. That would make them a lot more easy to access and would update what you're talking about. It might not help us overhaul BART completely, but I'm not sure how much ability Albany has to do that. I also wanted to ask on the subject of the SB2 and what you guys are applying for, is the goal of that to come up with a specific plan for San Pablo Avenue? Okay,
Yeah, that was the direction from City Council, is to prepare a specific plan.
awesome.
Okay. Anything else for item 4?
I don't have anything else.
Then we'll move on to item 5, which says none presentations. So then we will move on to item 6, which is subcommittee reports. Business Improvement District, any update there?
No.
Farmers Market,
No, not as yet.
okay. Marketing and Outreach, we did present some ideas back maybe 2 meetings ago, and not sure.
I feel like you're waiting for us on that one.
Maybe 1 or 2 items, but not necessarily all of them, no. But, I mean, maybe next meeting.
Yeah, we can bring something.
Okay, thank you. Arts Committee?
It's next Monday, so next meeting.
Excellent.
Reports to you guys.
All right.
Nice to have you back on that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, they're great. They're very enthusiastic.
Related to that, I just sent out a link. There's a proposed mural for the Albany, what is it, the Hillview Vet Hospital, I think it's called. There's a proposed mural for that space, and I guess it's the Arts Committee that's requesting feedback. So I sent you a link in case you're interested to provide feedback on that mural.
Is this it, on top of the email? It's like this is how the actually, great. Thank you.
Okay.
On that one?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I spoke to the owner of the building that's on the corner of Santa Fe and Solano, Renee. She owns that, she has Renee's Restaurant, and now there's a tea house there, which you all should patronize, because I don't see many people in there too often. I'd hate to see it just disappear. But she has that big, huge wall, and she'd be up for a mural. She agreed. So if you
Yeah.
want to tell the Arts Committee, and she
So do you happen to have the address? So Santa Fe,
is,
Solano, and,
This is where Supercuts used to be.
okay.
yeah, right, that's exactly right.
So now, so Renee's is in that building?
Renee's Restaurant is in the building,
And there's a tea shop?
and she owns the building.
Okay,
That's why I spoke to her.
okay, I will ask them.
Robert, would it be okay if I got you in contact with the Arts Committee liaison as well, just so you could put,
Put them together?
Renee.
Sure.
is it Renee?
Renee, yeah.
In touch with?
Yeah.
her? Okay, great.
She's easy to work with.
Okay, thank you. Item 6.1, review draft business survey.
So you gave some suggestions for a business survey, and then we took some of them, and then the one of them that said only 10 questions we didn't take because we had a lot of questions. So if you want to take a look at this, take a couple minutes and let us know if you have any feedback on this, or you can also just email us directly. We'd be happy to take things into consideration. Right now, it's a lot of questions, but we're happy to just cross things out that you think you might not be interested in knowing.
What's the city's intention with the data? Like,
We're going to sell it on eBay.
Well, that's a great question. I think we thought it would be really interesting to share the information with your committee, and then kind of take it from there and see if there's any interesting trends. I think the most interesting thing to the city is the types of services that people would think are beneficial, which would help us in prioritizing implementation of our economic development strategic plan. You sort of like, this piece here about understanding the challenges and understanding how we can help promote business vitality in the city are the things that are most interesting to us. So this other data would be nice to know, just to kind of get a sense of we could sort the data in a way where it would say, okay, small businesses feel this way and large businesses feel this way, those kinds of things. But the the first set of questions about the businesses themselves, we don't have to ask if you think that any of those are intrusive.
When you say I'm sorry, did I hear you correctly, the first set of questions or the?
Yeah, the basic information questions. So it starts with question 1.
I think the one people would most, I mean, I don't know, they might object to most is how much estimated annual revenue you have. That's, people tend to be pretty private
Yeah,
about that.
yeah. And the other option is we could keep these on and make them optional.
I don't know, it seems like the city should have the information regarding the, if they're an owner, non-owner, property owner. To me, that's not as germane, if that's the question. And then as well as if it's a retailer, we should have that information, or the city should have that information. And I think staff can massage that to make it so not to be, because if that's the first 3 questions, I'm done, I'm not going to answer the questions. I probably won't.
I think you're right, but what I would find most likely is that people will not answer the questions they don't want to answer, and they may answer the ones they do. So you'll just get an incomplete survey, and that'd be okay.
Right, I'm just wondering if I get, well, from a business perspective, the first 3 questions are objectionable enough that you're not filling it out, do you stop? And then I'm moving on to my next thing, or you want to hit the first thing, like, what can the city do for me? Oh, that's something I want to respond to.
Yeah, you're supposed to start with the less intrusive, less scary questions. So we can definitely redesign this so these, what kind of business are you things come last, especially if they're less important to us.
To me, also, I'll just, top of my mind would be, especially if they're a service or a retail type, like, where are their customers coming from?
That's a really good question.
Because to me, that's something then you can start plotting, so, well, these 3 businesses are more regional, or these folks are really neighborhood, and we can start to maybe look at what programs can help them or link them or whatever, who knows?
I have a lot of notes. Do you want them now, or do you want me to just drop this with you, or?
Do you want to give a brief overview? Oh, I guess you have to
That'd be
take
great
off in a
hear.
sec, but
I'd like to hear them.
Well, for the first one, I would say that which of the following titles apply to your Albany business? It seems like it should be apply to you in relation to your Albany business. Would be a better fit. And then for number 4, I would say you should specify whether you're asking about FTEs within the city of Albany or overall. Like, I have multiple locations, so, whether I'm answering for how many work in Albany versus overall, it's a very different answer.
do you as a group have an opinion on what would be most interesting? Would you like to see just how many FTEs are at the business in Albany?
Yeah, I'd be
That's what I
more
would do.
germane to Albany.
Maybe both, though, because if it sort of doesn't, it's just more also interesting in relation to the overall business, right? Like,
Well, it'd be good to know, like, for example, Stephanie's Worldwide Enterprises has more employees out in Walnut Creek than in Albany, and why? How come we're not able to sustain a larger, serve you so that you can work better here?
you could have total number, and then you could have number in Albany.
Yeah.
Or like maybe number in Albany first, because that's our concern, but.
On
Yeah.
number 5, I would suggest, oh, sorry.
No, I just think if I'm a business, I have 100 employees, am I trying to answer how many live in Albany then at that point? So it becomes more, it's information that's nice to have, I guess, but I don't know if it's going to be pertinent. Anyway, go ahead.
On number 5, I think that level C is too broad, because I think there's a lot of differentiation between a business that does 250,000 and a business that does $1 million. I would break it down and add a level, maybe 500,000 to $1 million. Under 6, I would add industrial possibly, and then I would also add other there, because maybe somebody doesn't see like how they fit in. You have other in a lot of other questions. On 8, I would also add not applicable, because when I looked at this, I'm not planning on relocating. I'm not like nothing really fits. My lease isn't up in the next 2 years. I'm not planning on closing my business. I'm not planning on expanding my business space. So you
Or
might,
other would be good.
Is that number 8?
number 8, yeah.
I think it's on the other page, just to make
It is
sure.
there, okay.
And then 9 seems more like a sub-question of 8 rather than its own. Sort of same thought, but an expansion of it. I think number 10, you could make it more clear whether you're asking, like, what are your top 3 business challenges in Albany or in general? Because, I think probably it's useful for us to know, is the business climate in Albany specifically challenging, or is business everywhere challenging? That might be 2 different ideas. In number 11, I would also add events and marketing, because for me, those things in all of my different locations, those things bring me a lot of business. And I really appreciate those types of efforts to support my business.
So can I add something too? Something that jumps out to me on number 11, it's just like what type of service. I also like the word resources. Can the city offer?
That's a really good,
Right, yeah. Sorry.
that's okay, it was good. Number 12, I would also add all of the above, or check all that apply, so that it's not pigeonholing people into one or another. For 13, again, I would add special events as an option. And also, what about business networking groups like BNI or those types of things, or Rotary, or I think people a lot of times use those types of things to promote their businesses. If you're going to take something out, I would take out 14 because it's broad and open, and I think people get shy away from that kind of thing. When they're faced with it on a survey, it's when they click out and don't go back. For 15, I would also add email as an option. Maybe one of those was intended to be email, but maybe we could be more specific if that was the case. And then, would you like to receive? I don't know if you're trying to eliminate questions for 17. That's one I would take out. And I have to go.
Where are you going?
Sorry, which you said take 17 out?
I would, if you have to eliminate some, that's one that I would suggest. And I'll leave this with John to give you so you can have my notes.
All right, thank you.
Mic drop.
I'm out.
Those are great. I have one comment. On 14, for some businesses, that's probably the most encouraging question.
And how is the survey going to be distributed?
We were actually thinking about mailing it out to everyone who has a business license. I mean, that's kind of a big project, but we could, typically we don't have a lot of resources, and so we just use online surveys. But I think for this, we need to try to reach out to everyone individually, which would mean what we could do is mail this out and say, hey, you can take this at the survey link, or you can mail this to us. We could give people both those options in case some people like to do the online thing.
But just so you're going to send it as part of their business license renewal, or just mail them direct?
I think we might just mail them directly. Sometimes doing things through the business license renewal gets complicated.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Questions or comment? It seems like if,
No, I said we could also, present the survey at one of our business mixers as well, since we get a lot of businesses that come.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And it's really only a 5-minute survey, so it shouldn't, 5-10-minute survey. So.
okay, good idea. Anything else on 6.1?
Actually, would it be hard to have an option also, like to put it into something like SurveyMonkey? And then people could either,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. We'd mail it, and then we could give people a link to the SurveyMonkey if they
That
want to do
sounds-
it that way.
yeah.
If you mail it and you don't include a stamp, it's.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right. So good comments, thank you. Hearing no,
And a deadline.
anything else on 6.1? 6.2, committee discussion on vacant storefronts.
So we have sort of mentioned in our announcement section, we have some vacant storefronts, some really prime retail space for Albany, some storefronts that have been vacant for quite a while. And so we're looking to you to see if you have suggestions for what we might do in terms of, reaching out to brokers or other kinds of things we can do to kind of bring in the right kind of tenants, and then also help us think through if there are any specific criteria that you think we should be looking for in, finding tenants for these spaces. It's not, ultimately, it could just be that the landlords are charging too much. We don't know. But we're hoping you can help us fill these spaces. And so some of the examples are the Foam Creations, the previous Foam Creations building at Canes on Solano, which, what?
Go ahead, I think they're, go ahead, no, please, go ahead.
You think they're charging too much? Yeah. And then that's next to Wildcard Brewing, which kind of built out this really nice space that's great and now vacant. And so that could be something wonderful. Previously Cantina del Sol or Cafe Eugene on Solano as well. And then up on Solano, Zan's seems like they want it to be a food space, but they haven't found anyone yet. So there's probably more, but those are the big ones that we're thinking about that we think would be
Which one's that one again? Sorry?
desirable. Zan's is,
Yeah, I think it.
yeah, I can't remember what the cross street is up there. Up on Solano. So let us know if you have either kind of sort of specific tenants that you think would be a good fit for those spaces, or any criteria you think, are we looking for food? Are we looking for retail? And then anything you have suggestions on how to kind of encourage these landlords maybe to lower rents if that's the issue, if that's the barrier. I guess we're not really clear what the barriers are.
There are also, when I was walking recently along San Pablo, that complex around near Portland, the large condo complex, there seemed to be a lot of space there too on the floor. There's at least a couple of empty storefronts there. So they don't seem to be doing well. And the building next to mine, which was occupied by these guys that did gaming, is now for rent $4,500 for per month for a space that's maybe 1,200 square feet. Pretty nice rent if you can get it.
Well, when we talked from a marketing perspective, that was some of the ideas that we brought forward, was to kind of, anything from us having business cards to hand out when we go out, and so this would be a great fit for that space when we're out and about. It could be helpful. I think it may be also helpful for this committee to hear from a broker who represents one of those properties to maybe talk to us about what they're seeing out in the market and what they're experiencing out in the market, what they're hearing, and I think that could be helpful for this committee to understand. And then, I was thinking about the survey. Some of these businesses may know other entrepreneurs who want to have a space and just haven't really made, I'm so busy with my work, I don't think about this empty space next to me. Maybe maybe a survey question would be, do you know anyone who's looking for space? It could be another opportunity, so.
Be nice to maybe even get with some of these, some of the landlords and the brokers representing the properties and see if there's incentives. A lot of them I'm sure do move in or may have some special incentives that they're able to do. It would be nice to kind of somehow be able to promote Solano a whole lot better as one of two places that are recognized as one of the greatest, what would we say, the greatest
cities
city
or
or street,
spaces in,
space in California. Beyond, the stroll, I think we've always kind of done a poor job of marketing what we have on Solano Avenue.
Art station.
true.
So, I mean,
No, I hear you.
yeah,
That-
yeah,
It's a good idea.
yeah. I mean, if we-
And who knows, the incentive part, when we hear from the broker, may say, for them to switch out, it's $100,000 for this, maybe there's a way to defer, and they still owe us, maybe there's or the city, just defer until occupancy versus at the time they strike the, the first nail, so to speak.
I just want, where Little Star Pizza is, there's the store next to it is vacant. Wasn't Little Star there first?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, thank God. I thought I was losing my mind. So why did they move?
They outgrew that space.
And the next door is bigger, I take it?
So those used to be doctor's offices, and then they tore them down and built the space that Little Star is in now. And where Little Star was Cafe Eugene. So when they made the move, they'd already had this partnership with someone who was going to have that cafe, and they ended up closing, and then Cantina del Sol went in,
That's the
and they
one
had
that-
some financial issues where they had to close pretty suddenly.
Yeah, and Alan talks about the problems of getting the permitting done, and Cafe Eugene gave up. That's what he said, anyway. Got it.
So does that help to some degree for next steps? And then,
Yeah, I guess
go ahead.
the other question is, what do you want to see? Are there specific uses that you think are missing on Solano Avenue that we should be targeting?
I think it'd be interesting to hear top of mind what people have, but I think, to me, like a pet store, well, we have a pet store on a big one, but something more boutique-y would be, I think, seeing all the dogs and all the pets, I think, are in the community. It seems like there could be a more niche-y type of boutique-y pet store.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm not in the restaurant business, but I mean, being that is a kind of a restaurant district, if I am looking for a space, I'd probably want to see maybe what some of the other restaurants are saying, or what the area is doing. Hey, restaurants here do 30% more or whatever, than any other place. Something like that. Something
Good
that maybe
point.
has some figures
Absolutely.
on it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to. I mean, obviously the rent is a lot more costlier here than some of the other places, but the return can certainly be higher because of the traffic. But a lot of people don't know that, or may not understand. A lot of people don't understand and do the math on looking at their demographics and things like that.
Well, to your point, I think like Juanita Mod coming and
Yeah.
setting that bar,
Yeah.
literally and figuratively, of their, of that type of a restaurant and how much they're producing, you won't be able to give them that number, but you can say, hey, a 4-star, 5-star restaurant can do this in Albany.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
many years ago, a couple of us got together and we had an agreement from the Berkeley Opera to relocate to downtown to that theater when the theater was being closed and sold. And we wanted the city to buy the theater, which represents 1/4 of that entire complex block. So it had all that. And we would have got the Berkeley Opera as an anchor tenant, and we would have been able to build from that as a community performance space. And doing something like that would make a difference because you would have a different kind of traffic. And you don't have to do it with opera, but there are other things you could do it with. And unfortunately, the people on the city council at the time thought it was a bad idea to buy that property for $630,000. And we were like, what are you thinking, But in any event, we couldn't convince them. The entire Berkeley Opera came here, and then to Carmen's we rewrote the entire libretto to sing about coming to Albany and about how they needed a space, and they came in and performed the damn thing for the city council, and the city council was like, But in any event, being able to do something like that would be great for Solano. And the other thing that I have raised before, we missed out on Apple. It went to 4th Street. Our city never was paying attention, never got on top of it, never realized that was a possibility. And we don't have any major retail outlets like that on Solano. It's something, a real big draw that would bring people and be a major tax base. And so while I do agree that we want great 5-star, 4-star, 5-star restaurants and boutique shops, because that is sort of the nuts and bolts of our business, we should be looking for a couple of bigger fish to help anchor things and to help bring more traffic. We're not doing that. Now's the part of our effort and thrust to see that we get business development, and we're out there. One of the reasons we supported having staff time for that kind of effort.
Given our older buildings and smaller square footage and sort of the characterization of our retail space, can you think of anchor tenants that you think might be a good fit? Or is it mostly mom and pops?
Yeah, that was one of the draws that we had to deal with. But when Goodwill closed, there was that entire spot that became CVS. It's a pharmacy, and it does okay, but it had that plus the parking behind it. It was a great opportunity to be able to draw a big place because you could tear down and build something that would work.
I don't think I think the dream to get a huge player is going to be a challenge because of the parking. And until we address the parking, I mean, I don't think an Apple store is going to come on Solano Avenue because there's no place to park. If I look at the first thing that came to mind, I hate to say it, but I mean, with typical retail kind of struggling right now, the Amazon stores, that's it on 4th Street, that seems to be doing very well. And I think it would be something a little bit more realistic.
Might be some objection to that.
Yeah, I know, totally.
And that'd be controversial.
I said the A word.
We had a shot at getting Whole Foods, and we dithered and fought over how it was a right or bad thing, whatever. So instead of having Whole Foods here in Albany, we have Whole Foods on Gilman, because as soon as Berkeley sniffed that we were putting the brakes on the deal, they just picked it up. Tom Bates couldn't wait to meet with them and get it all done. We should figure out what works and then worry about the heat that's going to come for pursuing it. And I disagree with you, by the way, about Apple. I don't think our parking is that bad. And with that kind of a space, you could have provided parking behind the building.
Well, Aaron, do you have a comment? Because you.
I wanted to agree that I think we need a lot more retail because we don't have that really represented. We have a ton of restaurants, which are great, but we could do with a little bit more of it. And I agree with you that it would have been great to get Apple, and we should have some sort of idea in place of how we would do that. But there's a lot of spaces like where Foam Creations would be a great spot for a ton of sort of retail, especially seeing as we have a bunch of coffee shops now, we have a bunch of restaurants, we have a bunch of cafes. If we had some sort of a bookstore or something like that in that area, that would be fantastic.
They were talking about that for a little while, so
Right.
it's funny.
Can bookstores survive? I love bookstores, and there's one in the city that has constant new authors coming in doing lectures, and it does well. Could one survive here? That would be wonderful if we could do that.
If possible, I think we should try and make it happen, or at least try it. And I also think something like Wildcard was a really good fit because it felt different to what we had. And it was a sort of unique space, and it makes me sad every time I go past that space, and that's not what it was anymore because they had interesting events, and it wasn't the bar scene that we have on San Pablo, and it wasn't the restaurants, but it was something else. So things of that sort of nature that could fill also some of that performing space you were talking about that wouldn't be a theater, but can offer a venue for those sorts of things on a smaller scale.
Creations would work for a performing space of modest size.
That's true.
Okay, any other brainstorming?
By the way, the Berkeley Opera moved to Orinda.
Are they still called the Berkeley Opera?
We lost them. they wanted to do it.
Suppose, you know, those parklets that are outside of restaurants seem to generate a lot of people. So I work behind that whole little stretch on University where it's this vegan restaurant called, I think it's called The Butcher's Son. And I think that in the younger generation, people in their 20s, they're all vegans. And so it's like, that place has a line every day. And it's crazy. And they also did a whole parklet. And it's very busy every day. Like, it's like the line's out the door. And so I think if you can get a restaurant that wants to also, I guess then you're losing the parking spaces. But and also there's a cheese board. Like, there's just so much going on.
Yeah.
Those places where they do a parklet also. And, you know, people can really sit and eat and, you know, the cheese board is really, I think, like a destination for people when they come to Berkeley.
Absolutely.
So,
And they have no parking, too. It's like,
yeah. I think the KALB people probably walk.
yeah.
You know, there's a lot of young people that get there, however.
Maybe we should import young people.
There you go. That's the thing. So I guess pizza is what we need. We have
got
Little
pizza.
Star.
That's a great, what you're suggesting also is a unique food option where people will come from all over to
Yeah.
enjoy.
It's a
Like
place
a
in
destination.
Yeah, it's a place in Marin called, I think it's MH Bread and, either MH Butter or MH Bread and Butter. It's so good. And they only have one location. When I'm there next, I will.
Drop your card.
Yeah. So in terms of calling you guys, who should we, I think we should give them like one, should we give them your name and number, like to keep it simple? Okay.
I would give them Christopher Tan's name and number, and if you don't have that, I can email. You do? Okay. Yeah, he's technically our business liaison.
The Chat Cafe also suddenly left their location in Berkeley. And they said that they have a little thing on their door saying that they couldn't renew their landlord wouldn't give them a new 10-year lease. And they had to go. And they apparently have been there for many, many years and had devoted clientele, and it was good. So their name is on the notice.
There's a cafe,
It's called the Chat Cafe.
chat.
Vix?
Excuse me?
Vix?
Not Vix.
Oh.
It was on University.
Oh, okay.
Right between MLK and Milvia on the south side. And it's been there for a super long time, and it wasn't like super busy, but always fairly steady and very good. And but it's gone. I mean, just like overnight, they're gone.
You're making me hungry, so.
Yeah, I know. So.
That's
yeah,
a
I
good
think-
idea.
Yeah, I think a good restaurant will bring people from everywhere.
Yeah, and I'm thinking I'm doing the same thing. So if all of you want to just live your lives and wonder like, wow, I wish this thing was in Albany, because, you know, Oaktown Spice is a good example of something that was really, really great destination in Oakland. I used to go there. Now there's one in Albany. I mean, things like that, maybe that want second locations, because with Oaktown Spice, they came because we're so close to Marin and they had all these customers from Marin. So if there are other things in Oakland that you think are really successful that would be a fit for Solano, that might be a good model too.
All right, well, thank you. So that's the end of 6-2. Future agenda items. Okay,
We'll try to work on some marketing stuff. I can't promise it'll be this month because this next month is really nuts, but we'll
Okay.
try our best.
Like a social media campaign strategy or something like that.
Yeah. We can definitely bring the marketing conversation at least. I can't promise that we'll bring.
but you can bring the broker.
something.
We talked about maybe bringing a broker.
Oh,
who-
right. Yeah.
Who can do a little presentation for us to understand the opportunities and challenges, constraints, weaknesses that they see. Yes, Rob?
So we had a conversation with the issue of revamping Solano and streets. So I was just wondering what the timing of that was going to be.
Oh, the complete streets. We brought your comments back to you in June, and May or June, I can't remember, and you approved them, and we sent them off. And then since then, actually on Tuesday night, council accepted the plan,
Accepted which plan?
the complete streets plan.
Just as it is?
I believe so. I was not there.
Oh,
I think.
Okay.
I can't, they may have suggested some comments to be incorporated in the final, but I can't remember.
Okay, because I
Maybe
thought,
for the next meeting, you just give us an update on.
yeah,
on that.
Sure.
I actually thought they were going to come back and do a presentation, the people with the alternate plan. I guess not.
I will, yeah, I'll check with the folks that are working on that and see if they can give an update on what happened.
Yeah.
Sounds
What it
good.
looks like.
Just report out. All right.
Yeah.
So with that, we stand adjourned.
Excellent job.
Thank you.
Terrific job.